So a possible building on the Ashley River could be part of that same plan, or would that be different?
I believe as part of, the parks plan, we have that. In order. We can send that all out to that. Look at, again, it's not money, it's not in the list that we can't. On the list that we have to say, we have to have plans. We just get started in that. That was not. And I agree with that. And look at it.
So when you, when we look at bringing an entity into town, and we look at the impact analysis that it has, that particular entity, is it based on our current structure of what we charge? Well, that's insanity.
Our impact, so that's just one of the revenues that when they look at it, that they're looking at based on, those are the reasons, not something that's brought in.
So in other words, if we were at 100% on parks and 100% on fire, that is going to make some things look much better than they look today, and others that we might say no to look good enough that we would want to say yes to.
Yes,
Is
sir.
that an accurate way of portraying that?
You have to be able to tie it to work. You can't do a repair on, the hay and the roof, or the hay and the.
Oh, yeah, I understand. Yeah.
It's getting pressure on it for, needs to be expanded, or needs to increase the number of people in town.
I mean, I understand that's how you use them, but when it terms of, is this development of value to the town, or is it a cost to the town? Then we're making everything looks better. It helps us weed out the really poor ones.
Well, and a good way to look at it is, as part of, when someone goes to do something, we require that they, put parks in. Some of those parks we end up taking over. So if we build new town parks, we require people to build new town parks, put in parks space. And, but then those single family houses aren't paying 100% of what they could pay, as their impact on our parks.
Right.
Like with the next development, they agree with us on parks, so they actually don't get parks. How part of the development.
With the port facility, you guys want to give us a little bit of an update on the bidding and where we are, so we know, we're looking for options of where to.
Yeah, initially we budgeted about $300,000 for renovation of the building. And our lowest bid came to $500,000. And the highest bid was somewhere probably around 7 something. But we will do that. And we're still waiting here.
Derek, can you let you know? Well, as far as I understand, there are 3 potential options for the court. I guess there are 4. You could leave it where it is, which is not really an option, or moving it into what I'm gonna call the Kramer building, which is what Rich is talking about. There's another potential option out by the lumber mill. there's a building there, that's suitable size, suitable parking and all that other kind of stuff. That's really kind of suitable for the police and everything to get to. And then we are having discussions with Dominion on the potential acquiring of some of their property on Cedar Street. And hopefully we will get some feedback on that in the next couple of weeks.
Terry, what about the lot we already own on Berlin G, right there at Cahagan? It's the bus stop now, that corner lot?
Russ, am I correct? That's the one behind the. Plus,
We couldn't work around that?
That's not big enough, Bob.
No,
You're talking about where the buses park down there, the Hagen and Berlin.
Yeah.
It's not big enough. Yeah, we checked that out to start with. And, since we owned it, it's not quite big enough. We got a good, we got a pretty good, Terry got a pretty good report on that other property from Minton last night. And that might work, hopefully. We'll know something in the next 2 weeks, maybe next week.
and would the fire go over there also?
Huh?
Would the fire go on that property also, fire headquarters?
Could.
Good, yeah.
so for the capital improvement committee purposes, we will, put in, obviously, that's moving to another set that we're not moving to set for all of it. But I'm hearing our idea is to try to find an existing site and renovate it. That changes the numbers you're working. You're working at 1 or 2 million, not 3 or 4 million. Maybe about 1.
Well, I think it's safe, from my perspective, it's safe to say that we have to have a new court building at whatever option we end up with. 2, we know we have to expand police headquarters, which means we have to have fire headquarters. So there's no options here. When that happens is, $64,000 question, but not if it happens, but when it happens. For all 3.
I think we do maybe, the one big one.
Let's say, anybody have any, partner that any, renovating the station is cheaper than some of the other options that we're doing. We got something like, which,
Put us in the
for our
council.
net capacity, we could start, where I guess, right now, we can borrow, if we want to, borrow.
And the other thing that I guess we didn't mention, Rebecca, from the fire perspective, should nothing happen with Dominion, was also the property Woodlands tract. So there are options for each one of the project, with the exception of police, which I think is given it stay where it is.
We're having a hard time making those things. That is the question, that reducing the number of these slide number and we get that out.
Well, I'm good with moving on.
Okay, I know the fire headquarters, I believe, with already has that, this 5-year plan, year 3 or 4. Because, from Bridget's perspective, he's also looking at, the knowledge station now, and then the station, lawyer. Like that. Do they have any questions about that? The next topic, as we've gone through the past couple of months, this is a topic that we have emails with texts about, discussing our downtown strategies for investing in. For the revitalization and the success of any downtown work, we've got to continue attention to continue invest. It's not like, unfortunately, we're more than doing marketing. It's great. Downtown for ebb and flow, and as we're looking at our downtown, there's potential opportunities for investing now. And you guys are actually talking about one of those is the security and monitoring, and we asked Chief Wright to come up with some options for putting individuals downtown during peak hours in our downtown district. We currently have what we put up, Chief Wright has called it detail where officers can sign up for those hours. That hasn't worked out that great because it's a short amount of time that's hard to get people to sign up for. So, Chief, you want to talk about
Sure.
the personnel and
I appreciate your time, ladies and gentlemen. So obviously you've had a couple incidents in the historic district, particularly in a 5-block quadrant of Hutchinson Square, near Town Hall, just in the past 6 months. And I can have sidebar with anybody about that, but I think you know I'm talking about a couple of violent incidents that occurred. But with that being said, just like the town administrator alluded to, we do have a detail that people sign up for Friday and Saturday night that basically works from about 10 to when the bars are closing and whatnot in that area, just to make sure people will get into their cars safely and keep have a visible presence. We run into some problems. People just, they don't sign up for it, or there's not enough people to sign up for it to where it'd be safe to be in there, work in that area by yourself. 15 years ago, 10 years ago, we would bring our team and we would sit out there across from these areas, in that area, probably about 12:30 in the morning, wait for the bar to start closing. Just got to be a visible deterrent. But with our call volume and the growth and the amount of influx of people we're seeing coming into that 5-block quadrant from that period of time, it's just not possible to police that entire area there. So I pulled up and I can share it with y'all again on the sidebar, but just kind of calls to service that we've had in that area. And the 5-block quadrant basically would be Cedar Street all the way over to Gum Street, and then just to the railroad tracks on Loop Street, and then just south of the fountains at Town Hall. And I have a heat map that shows the time of day, what types of calls we're having in that area. So basically, we were shut down from probably March until around September, October, we started picking back up. So I went with September 1st to yesterday, and we had about 130 calls in that area. That does not include anything in the group home that is across, it's in that quadrant. I've redacted those out, but those calls range from narcotics activity to burglaries, tampering with motor vehicles, vandalism, to aggravated assaults, many other assaults, 9 assaults. And this is only things that are being reported. And much like I said to the administrator, was we have people that tell us about stuff. We had calls for a fight, or somebody's been assaulted, and you show up and everybody's gone. They've gotten in the car, thrown them in the car, driven to the hospital, or they wake up the next morning, they're beat up, and then nobody calls. But we have video footage, surveillance footage, where people have sent to us via social media privately of people being basically lynched, people being beaten in certain areas of the town over there in front of the bars, and then thrown in the cars and leaving. And it's just the ugly truth. I don't want to sugarcoat it, but we really need to have a presence down there in those times. And what I proposed was having a detail of officers that would be assigned only to that district of town, and they would basically work, and I would look at the analytics of the intelligence that we have there and work them during those time periods. And we've been getting calls and complaints from merchants for years and years since I've worked here about intoxicated individuals knocking over planters, no police presence, and we'd show up and everybody be gone, and then just not having the kind of personal touch of having law enforcement going door to door, knowing who the merchants are by name. And so we want to kind of change that mystique of power policing. in that area. And I kind of feel like if we could maybe tap into the H tax and use that to provide a source of funding, because this is giving directly back to what we're doing, trying to do, and that's our bread and butter, is that area of town. People come to this town because they want to experience that small town mentality, but they need to feel like they're safe too. And part of that is augmenting that manpower with video surveillance cameras that are actually in that 5-block radius as well, that will be live fed into the police dispatch center. We've had great success with what Lenny has put together in our parking garage. And the cameras there are phenomenal that we have through Johnson Patrol Security Solutions. So give you an example, two Fridays ago, our dispatch has large monitors in their center that allows them to see everything live that's going on around town hall and right there at the garage. And they were watching 2 individuals spray paint the top part of the parking garage, which we've had one of our biggest problems since we built the thing. And she's watching it in live feed. She dispatches an officer, the car leaves, and the camera system was so good, they read the tag leaving, and our officer stopped them. They both had spray paint on their hands, and they both got arrested. So that's kind of the importance of what we can do with real-time intelligence if it's monitored properly by us. It also would be recorded to a mainframe to where we would be able to go back and look at the surveillance footage for X period of time. And when I'm looking at it, if you go to downtown Charleston, you go to 5 Points in Columbia, you go to Greenville or some of these other areas, Rock Hill, they look like call boxes. It's like a box up on a pole that has a little dim blue light on it, and it's identified as Somerville Police. And that is a visual deterrent in itself to add to the police presence that would be in that area. So these officers will be assigned as a foot patrol, bike patrol. I would not ask for any vehicles for these officers. I could work that in with what I have from my spare fleet, because they're only really going to be going to that area. And we could also use these officers for anything with the parks. So Solo Branch Bike Path, if we have to control the bike path, we now use motorcycle police officers to do that several times a day. But as well as the parks like Gehagen, if they have movie night or something like that, they can adjust their schedule, and we can have officers out there that would be present as well. And again, I think that feeds into the hospitality tax is what we're looking at. So that is where I stand. I'd like to propose that we at least look at detailed officers that would be down there. I propose 4 police officers, a police sergeant that can oversee them, and they can work their hours in tandem so that we have coverage. If we have a special event, we have a third Thursday, we have some of these things going on, these officers will be down there as well. And obviously the camera system. So right now we're looking at for personnel about $320,000. That would be for the 5 personnel and their equipment, not to include a car. Would not ask for that. And then I got a quote from Johnson Control Security Solutions. I met with Lenny and Dale from that company, and we scoped out what it would look like in that 5-block radius. We ballparked between $100,000 to $150,000. Not all the cameras would be on poles. We'd have some that would be covert, so you would not know. They would actually be at street level. So it would look like it was part of maybe one of the merchants. They would be able to see sidewalk foot traffic, and that way it's not going to be vandalized. We know that there's a propensity for people who get intoxicated to want to take down a pole with a blue light on it, but we put them up high enough, it'll be safe. We've had the speakers in there playing music from Green, and as I know of, we have not had any of them torn down yet. So I'm open for questions.
I'm almost drawn a couple of them now.
Yes, sir. I'm open for questions, but I would tell you all this. This is long overdue. I want people to be able to come and have a beer or take their kids and walk down through the park and know that they're going to be safe because they've seen the visual deterrent from law enforcement presence. We have a quick response time as it is, but we are getting more stretched thin. On the heat map, I be able to mention this. There are several areas where you can see the actual geographic of where we're having our most problems. Most problems we have are going to be one-way central by Park Garage into the area that includes Montrose and 3 Little Piggies right there. We have the other hot spot that's going to be over by the Ice House. And then through the park up along the Evas and that part, it actually shows the color from from blues all the way down to yellow and the red, which makes it the most high activity or prone area. So obviously, it is money. I don't like spending money, but I think it's for something to look at.
This is
How long,
basically Second Street and Central Cedar to the railroad and across the same way over to, I'd say, Magnolia.
Yes, sir. And obviously, they're not going to get time out if they have to answer a call a block east or west of that if they need it, but they would be dedicated to that area, yes, sir. Yes,
Does,
sir.
you need 320,000 for the officer, 150 for the cameras, so that's like 470.
Yes, sir.
And, you know, the emphasis is to use the hospitality tax money, which I agree with. So, you know, we were talking about the hospitality tax and how we should be using this money to do the things we need to do for our citizens. So I think this is a great use of hospitality tax money. I think we've got possibly, hopefully enough right now. But the thing is, when would you be able to implement this program with approval of council?
As soon as you all, if you all were to approve it, I can move on it pretty quick, because the hiring of personnel is not an issue.
Okay.
It does take time to get those officers trained and whatnot. That could be months.
Well, I think we need to move on this ASAP, because, you know, we're talking about improving the downtown, building a hotel and being more competitive as a downtown against other municipalities. We cannot afford to have situations of security where people are worried about security. I think this is something that's very crucial right now. This is the number one thing should be on our agenda to get this problem taken care of. But that's the tip of the spear as far as the historic district, downtown Somerville, what makes Somerville what it is. So
Yes, sir. We have been we are still maintaining the officer presence. We went from a voluntary to a voluntold situation, where officers are being assigned down there right now until if it has to become a permanent detail. And, you know, right now it's going to be temporary until hopefully it's a Band-Aid till we can get something going.
Good.
But I think the merchants would very much appreciate it.
Absolutely.
I've seen the same scenario work pretty well and talked with one of the officers in Detroit, because their restaurant area is in the worst part of the town. And he said, well, the thing that really helped them, they have like every other block an uniformed police officer, but then they have undercover officers. And he said, that's what makes the uniforms make tourists comfortable. But what keeps people out is undercover, because they don't know who on the street is a cop, and increases your numbers.
The Charleston Police Department, Isle Police Department, Mount Pleasant Police Department, I'm not misspeaking, they have their called livability officers. If you go downtown Charleston and you go to any of the restaurants on King Street or around that area, you will see a uniformed police officer almost guaranteed. The car's parked and they're walking. And that's my vision is the future of the town of Somerville, is to have a cop walking a beat in that area.
I agree 100%. I think they'll put on the agenda for next council meeting.
So I think this rolls into the comment about budgeting and the budgeting on a yearly basis. This is something that these officers, for their costs, would then come directly out of something that I've done before in places in here. A completely justifiable as we invest in the downtown, as we want bringing different businesses that we all want, just to do. Now that we're out of the pandemic, we're starting back out in one place.
And I also failed to mention, and I think we need to be open to discussion, and it doesn't have to be done this budget cycle, is also putting call boxes on the Sawmill Branch bike path with a dim blue light on it and with video surveillance. I think we are opening ourselves up to a lot of potential litigation. We do have lighting on there at night, but there's propensity for crime. We have had crimes occur along that route. And I think if people, for example, where they park their vehicles to walk, we are constantly getting people's cars broken into in that area. They're coming here from out of town, So they're rummaging through their cars. I'd like to have, eventually, at some point, have some video surveillance on those parking areas and then along the Solon Branch bike path.
We talked about that from before. I think it's amazing we've been able to have this on the branch for this long.
Lucky is good.
Not have, look like complete lighting, we call that talking the whole thing, we kind of control and everything. I think it's a lot more community. We haven't had any large scale problems. But there will come a time that we will, as we invest in one, we're trying to expand some of the trailhead sign. That we want more people to use it, more in the county, to expand trails, people can ride from one side to the other. That's great. If you don't protect it, it's not secure location. People are still feel safe. Your investment is fall flat. I think we've been very, very, very wonderful. But most places, start out with lighting cameras, lighting cameras and at the trailheads where people park and go on. There's been some discussion before when I first got here and talked to them about the false people come up and push the button for the call box. False. But I've been in situations where it's safe.
I'd rather have the false call than to have us not have the ability to know something happened. Even if it's a medical emergency, a lot of that stuff happens on the trail too. That people die, cardiac arrest on the trail, so it goes straight from dispatch center. And when I have the platform, I still have it. I did speak with Ms. Amy Evans as well from Parks about potentially in the future, how it looks with her budget or whatnot, we would do it. Is also having cameras in the park. They're obviously looking at putting Wi-Fi in some of the parks in town, and these would be able to feed right through the Wi-Fi and upload straight to the cloud without problem. So it is something that we need to look at. I do have a couple parks in town that we have quite a bit of issues with from time to time, and I think it's something that would make parents feel much better about their children or themselves being in the park anytime of the day.
This is to me an interesting correlation of how you use money. We were talking about hospitality fund and whether or not you fund this or you fund that or you fund this activity. That's one where people have fun, and that's one thing. But that $180,000 pays for all of the camera systems in the first year to provide safety for everybody downtown. Because it doesn't take a heck of a lot of instances downtown to kill downtown and the amount of traffic that goes down. And then every year after that, you've got 50% of what it takes to fund the officers that are on the street. So I mean, we've just reached the point where safety's got to a point time within the budget and within reality of what we can do. That safety needs to come out in front of fun. No,
I definitely think that's a conversation we have on prepared for, but those are the points that I hear downtown businesses and especially when you're sitting outside, you have these people who they're basically like cruising, but they're cruising the parking lot. It is loud music, loud engines, and it's just a huge deterrent if your business is located near there, or if you're just trying to park. So I think that's obviously something to look at it. How you do that, or what charge, you charge after a certain hour or on the weekend for different times.
If we don't charge, putting one of those officers that you're talking about,
They'll be waiting at the bottom of the ticket book, yes, sir.
Control,
yeah.
I agree, and just FYI on the new boat landing, we did put cameras in that bid to go in there. There's all, well, you know better than I do, that's
I've been to every
crazy place.
Sure.
And FYI, just a question, we're at the budget meeting. If you got your sergeant and 4 officers that are mainly gonna be there,
would that allow you to cut one of the officers you're asking for patrolman?
For the team six? No, sir. I would not be willing to do that. Of course, that's your decision. But obviously, so we put that into the budget as something completely different. So that's intelligence-led policing, team six. We have a team five we augmented 2 years ago, and what they do is they augment patrol. So when the patrol teams are coming on and getting off at 6 in the evening, the problem was they were overlap time and they weren't getting home until 8 o'clock at night and got off at 6. So this officers would come out and their call takers, and all they would do was and we look at all the analytics from Tuesday to Friday, you work 4 days or 5 days, and they do nothing but overlap and augment that. So this team that I'm proposing right now would, in essence, take the place of the days that they're not working. So there's days that there's not coverage, and also if we did have some issues in some areas and we wanted to send them in there, we could. But we're one of those positions is backfilling a crime scene position that we took from team five to send another person to crime scene. We saw after some of the things that happened in there that we needed to get somebody else in there to help with the 36,000 pieces of evidence that we have our hands on. So that's a backfill position to give back to team five.
These five you're talking about are the five that we saw in the budget earlier?
No, sir. These are not. Those are the general budget for the team six officers.
Okay.
And the ones I just talked about today, that's just part of the downtown strategy. That's for this. Yes, sir. That would be paid for out of hopefully a different stream.
We could use accommodations tax for this too, couldn't we?
You guys have any questions?
And like I said, we need to implement this as quick as possible.
The only other thing I want to mention about that is when we talk about investing in downtown, last week we talked about looking at streetscaping with the rest of Main Street, all the way down Highway 78. We've gotten some estimates on that. Fortunately, it's really, streetscaping, sidewalks, paving, lighting, moving power lines. The estimate we got was $6.3 million, about $1 million a block. We want to go back and try to cut some of that down and work with the building company with revolving loan fund, non-standard service funds that we use from the some of that. And then one of the big issues is that here's when everything is projects to do sidewalks or anything they will be repaid. Their way of getting the roads repaid, quickly take that. That's over $100,000 for each block of repaving. I just want to let you guys know that I'm still working on that, but we got talked about it. But I've got plans in the office that now I'm going back and forth with the landscape architect. We asked a lot of Madeline actually walked the whole thing. A lot of, we got really good tree stuff down there already. So we can save a fair amount of money doing landscaping on that stretch. We've asked Jesse to ask our arborist Bill to go look and make sure that we draw trees. Some of them go, some great that we're happy to do that. We're trying to do the big cost, figure out this other way we can pay for it. We think that might be something that could kind of people to do that.
Can you do it a block at a time, start the railroad track and work it out? The closer you are to the square, the more impact you can have. I know that putting lines underground and all that, place it all at once.
And there's ways to do it. And I will say that our engineering firm has done a fabulous job of acquiring, I think we have now, we are in the service of gathering up time. $6 for the meeting, so we don't have much to do with it. It's do it based on the letter, but it all makes sense. I think it would make a huge difference. Looking at cleaning up Main Street with new businesses, new investment. We're continuing to look for that. And then you got all of the road closing projects, but to make sure that everyone remembers the Cedar Street project, possibly continuing that through, is part of the district and Main Street. And I know that the mayor and council have been working really hard on the project. Folks have to do next week on that project. So everything that we're doing with an eye to taking through traffic off of our downtown and off of our Main Street, to try to make it more, walkable area. And then the discussion of possible incentives later on, part of that package includes stuff for existing businesses. And the idea would be that our existing downtown businesses would be happy to apply on the side enhancements for these to improve fire escape, different issues with the building. I don't know if y'all pay much attention when you walk downtown. There's a really cool. We also have some where literally the walls are falling down. Rich can tell you about that. And some of these really need help. If we want to continue to invest in downtown, continue to have new business downtown. I think we can look at it. We help participate with property owners doing rework grants or something to try to get them to put money into those projects now before they really fall.
Well, we have one building on Richardson, right next to this location, the Richardson Mall, and apparently the insurance company is not.
I think we get on a slippery slope when we start using incentives for renovating private buildings. I don't think they'll be.
And talking about the side students are old students that everybody sees. I've always said reimbursable money for partner actions where they all partner didn't get free money to have to spend time for the house. This is cool. And I think we talk about that we do have an income, we have an that is coming in as we work with businesses in the building, try to bring in more. That's the impediment to some of the buildings currently closed is the structure themselves. So they're either going to fall down, we're going to get new structure there, or they're just going to fall into such there that we end up with some of the downtown that we go through. Maybe for the building to fall down.
But Rebecca, these buildings that you and Rich are talking about, are these privately owned buildings?
Okay, they're all private. And they're all private.
No, up toward Career and Greenwood, and both of them did it, especially in Greenwood. They rebuilt the whole town, 2 or 3 buildings at a time. And as long as it's reimbursable, and actually some of the businesses, I know the pizza shop we had lunch in with the group, they actually, when they got finished and got caught up, they ended up just donating money to the town as a thank you. So I think a program like that could work, and all that would cost us is an initial amount of money. We're going to put this much in, and then when it comes back, you give it back out and just rotate it. And I don't.
This bill with a brick law, actually, fire, well, the brick law now, which is supposed to fire, this will be called fire. For sure that don't run out.
Yeah, and we're trying to keep the historic district like the historic district, and letting the old buildings fall down isn't gonna work. I mean, even our building at the museum needs some tender loving care. That's our building.
Well, Rebecca, the federal money is for that.
So, not the side.
Which one?
Last, we were thinking also that we
We need to tear it down.
that the community fund,
We need to-
on that program.
We need to tear it down. Tear it down.
Yeah, I broke it. Yeah, we're trying to wait for the, and that, I can actually switch over to, I think did you put it as the next slide or the? No, I'll go to the next one, to the American Rescue Plan. So as part of the American Rescue Plan money, we're gonna supposedly get $7.3 million from the federal government, and half of that should be deposited in our account anytime now. It started, it was adopted March 11th, and they had with the first 60 days, within 60 days to deposit to give us some of the money. Because we're an entitlement community and we're classified in a certain way, we get a direct allocation of the funding. We don't have to go through the state like some of our sister cities do. So that money will come directly to us and we won't have to go through the state, because we've all kind of talked about it. Once the money goes to Columbia, we never get it back whole. So I'm excited about that, but that does mean we're getting a little bit less than some of the other places are getting. So we have until December of 2024 to spend those funds. And I've been on several webinars about it, and everybody kind of has some ideas of what you can do, what you can't do. But no one has, we haven't received any actual guidance from the Department of Treasury. They are supposed to have that guidance out in the same 60 days that we're supposed to receive the money, and that runs out on March 10th or 11th. So our hope is that by, probably not by next week, but at least by the second reading of the budget, that we know what we can spend the rescue plan money on, and maybe we can augment the budget with some of that fund.
So you're gonna receive this in increments, you're not gonna get the 7.3 over time.
The way we understand is we'll get half one year and half the next year. But there again, that's not even clear either. And I've sent out to you guys a list of things that we can spend it on. I don't know if you want me to read it to you or not before, but basically it looks at things, ways that you can counteract the negative economic impacts of COVID. Things like work, eligible employees, like essential workers, different things for them. Any revenue reduction that you had, we can go back and look at the revenues that we would have gotten last year or this year, and use that as revenue replacement. So then it's just revenue replacement in your general fund. So arguably, we do have a loss in hospitality tax, in sales tax, in court fines, and in things like special events and different funds like that, that we can use as a revenue reduction, and that can just go back in our general fund or our hospitality tax fund. So I think it's a great thing for us as we're doing our budget now. We just don't have any great answers yet, but we're supposed to have them by the 10th or 11th of this month.
So let me ask you something. So yeah, I know it's to reimburse you for losses due to COVID-19, but so if you tally up and you don't come up to 7.3, you can only get what you can prove,
No, there's
or they're going to give you the whole 7.3.
they'll still give you this whole 7.3 because you have those other three criteria other than that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
So-
you just rattle off one of the criteria.
Right. So I'll read them real quick. To respond to the public health emergency with respect to COVID-19 or its negative economic impacts, including assistance to households, small businesses and nonprofits, or aid to impacted industries such as tourism, travel, or hospitality. To provide premium pay to eligible workers of the locality that are performing such essential work, or to provide grants to eligible employers that have eligible workers who perform essential work. For the provision of government services to the extent of the reduction in revenue of the locality due to COVID-19 public health emergency relative to revenues collected in the most recent full fiscal year prior to the emergency. And then it says pending Treasury guidance stated above. And then the last one is to make necessary investments in water, sewer, or broadband infrastructure. And on one of the calls, it was asked whether stormwater is considered sewer, and one of the calls I was on, they said yes. So it may be that we can do stormwater projects with it since we don't have water or sewer. I will caveat that with Somerville CPW has come to talk to me and has a list of projects. If we are interested in funding any water and sewer projects, I think they have some projects we could fund also.
Let's look at their fund balance. If they need.
I appreciated that, that he came and talked to me. So as you look through it, we've got a list of kind of potential projects, but it all really depends on what that guidance says. It has to be things that the best way someone said it to me on one of those calls, well, said it to all of us, was it has to be something that you can write a memo about and justify how it meets one of those criteria and talk about it with a straight face. Like you don't need to, at some point, someone's going to come back, even to us communities where we get it directly, and ask us for some justification. So there will need to be memos in the file for each of the things that we expend the funding for to justify why and which one of those criteria that we're using it for. I don't know if any of y'all went through the Recovery Act money, the ARRA money, and I spent a fair amount of it, but I had binders for each project with the documentation you had to have that I think we're going to have to be able to justify it and be able to move forward. So I wanted to let y'all know about that. If you have any ideas for projects, we're looking at anything economic development related, anything farmers market related, anything looking at the rental assistance funds we already have, looking at what other people have done for revolving loan funds, and trying to just figure out if there's anything that could work.
Stadium.
Potentially. So if you look at the aid to hospitality or tourism, that was one of the calls that webinars I listened to. They talked about hospitality and tourism related things that projects. One of the ways you could justify something like that is a project that you were going to put funds into that you didn't because of the pandemic, or if it's anything that is a regionally significant project that's going to encourage economic redevelopment and hospitality and tourism. So because those were the two biggest businesses and industries that were hit, was hospitality and tourism. So I believe there's going to be a big emphasis on those types of projects, trying to get those businesses back to where they were before the pandemic. So, anybody have any questions about it or anything? I just want y'all to be fully prepared, because anything we do, we're going to bring back to you. We would want to do, even if we're not required to, we would want to have a plan that we put in place that council approves, that this is how we're going to expend the funds, so that we're all covered, that council has approved it, and that if someone comes back, we can check off the box and say, this is the ordinance where council approved this plan, and this is how, this ties to each one of this list of projects.
So you have to submit a plan of proposed expenditure to the feds. to get the
No,
money.
we do not. So far, that is not what anybody has told us. We will get our money directly.
Hmm.
And so it's interesting because some of your, like the rental assistance money that some of the counties got, that just got directly deposited into their account.
So we know we're gonna get this money. Usually the council will put our heads together and decide how we want to spend, what is the most needed things we need to do.
Yeah.
So,
And I think once we get that guidance from Treasury, I think that's going to be really important, because I think everyone has ideas and things you could stretch to fit in there. But other than revenue replacement, no one's really sure about revenue replacement, water, sewer, broadband. No one's really sure about any other projects. So
okay.
it's a very vague definition. So, all right. So they were looking to move lunch up, but I guess yeah. All right. I'll go back. All right. So I know there's some discussion that has been had offline about this topic, and the one thing I want to explain why we brought it up. This is something that I've wanted to talk to council about since like December or January, and we haven't had opportunity to have another retreat to talk about it. You guys have talked with me over and over again about annexation and recruitment of businesses and how to get certain properties to annex in that are existing businesses and different things of that nature. I know that Michael brought to you guys in 2019 a list of different incentives that could be done, and we looked at that, and worked with different people to try to augment that and try to address some of the concerns I think that were had before. You know, some of the concerns that were discussed before was that these, you know, this was incentives for new businesses and there was nothing for existing businesses. So as part of the Open for Business program, that program includes part of the incentives that were talked about before, but it also includes incentives that can be used for existing businesses for things like facade enhancements. And there's a whole list for that. The other ordinance that we sent to you guys is a business license tax ordinance. And yes, that's exactly, I believe it's almost exactly what it was before. The state only allows municipalities to do certain things when it comes to economic development. Counties have a little bit more leeway, but we only have specific things we can do. Business license is really the only actual abatement that we can do in that manner, and that the way that it is written is the way that many other municipalities have written it, and it has been withstood, I would say, years of consternation and challenges. So that's why that one is the same. There's not much more you can do with it. You can't do property tax abatement, although we'd love to. You can't. So unless you work with the county to do a FELO, you cannot. A municipality can't do that by themselves. So my question, there was some discussion that went back and forth whether y'all wanted to have any kind of generic conversations about it or not, or if you wanted to wait until the other councilman meeting, the next meeting to talk about it. For me and for our staff, mainly Michael, these things are all just tools that we can use if there are businesses that we want or properties that you guys want to annex. The business license incentive ordinance is a big one that if you want to annex an existing business, that's probably the only way you're going to ever get them to come in. They're existing. Because yes, I understand our public safety is wonderful, but for an existing business, trash service doesn't help them. Police and fire is great. But when they come into town, especially if they're coming into town from Berkeley County, they currently don't pay a business license. So if they're an existing business and we want to try to recruit them into town to annex them in, that's really the only tool that we have that we can use. Without that tool, then we're just going to them and talking to them saying, we love you, could you come into Somerville? Sorry, you're gonna have to pay a business license.
The bad thing is our agreements on this issue, not that it's bad to do it with police and fire, is those businesses know they have our police and fire anyway. And
Yeah, it is hard with that, yeah.
And, you know, in my area, Somerville's there long before the county gets.
So, again, as I mentioned, if y'all want to talk about it now, we can. If you don't want to talk about it now, we can talk about it another time. But I'm bringing these to you as a tool for staff to try to address the concerns that I hear council come to me and ask me about annexation, about revitalization, about downtown. We've tried to put together a program that would address existing businesses as well as new businesses. And it's all at the, council has to approve anything that happens. You don't have to do it, but you have the opportunity if it's a business or an existing business or a new business that you really want to try to recruit in general or recruit into town. So I'm good either way.
I haven't had a chance to read the Open for Business proposed ordinance yet. We just got it last night,
yeah.
and really hadn't had a chance to look into it. I prefer to get that put off to the meeting. On the tax incentive, this is, I think, the third time this has come up
Business license stuff.
before council, with almost identical format. And I don't see anything new in that. I objected to it in the past for two reasons. And one being, I think it's basically unfair if you've got, let's say, a restaurant that's been operating 30 years and they've been doing what they're supposed to be doing and paying the property taxes, business taxes and all that. Then somebody comes up and buys property next door, goes in competition with them, and they're getting these business license incentives for 3 years. Their services still have to be met, so the person that's been there 30 years is helping support his competition. The second thing about it is I just think it's basically unfair for the government at any level to be picking winners and losers in the marketplace, and that's what it's going to end up being. The town council can implement that or not implement it on a case-by-case basis, and we're deciding who's worthy of this tax money and who's not. And again, same thing I've said the last two times. I don't see anything different.
You make very good points. The only, when I look at this thing, the only part that appealed to me was if there's a large business that could bring in a lot of jobs, something like that. A substantial employer that's coming in and, you know, we want to annex that in because we know we're going to create 50 jobs or whatever. I think at the state level, that's mostly where they give the incentives for the big businesses that are coming in.
Yeah,
But I agree with you. If you got a local business that's been struggling for years and doing the right thing, somebody comes in and annex property next door. Yeah, I think you're right there. But I think if we can attract some larger businesses.
So business license is the reason why most of your larger office spaces or any industrial are usually not in a municipality. Because we don't have that, because we have it and most counties don't. So being able to give that advantage could help you get in some large employers when it comes to like office or industrial that we would want in town. And then you kind of reap the other benefits from it. You know, things like restaurants.
Yeah.
Business license is only one of the things we get, and a restaurant doesn't pay that much business license at all.
Right.
It's the hospitality tax that we want, and that completely supplements any of the business license that you would lose for those 3 years.
Okay, Rebecca, earlier you mentioned that due to the competitive market, the town stood to lose employees and had to compete with people that were applying for jobs in the private sector, and that people, there was not enough workforce here to staff some of these new companies, that if you come in from Orangeburg and different places nearby. And I'm not sure how that enhances our situation if we're annexing property and don't have employees to fill those positions, and it's bringing new people in here, and then we've got to worry about workforce housing. And I don't see the benefit of the town's existing citizens in annexing property that's going to provide employment for people that live somewhere else.
So the hope would be, and I do think, and I apologize for sending it out last night, but I wanted to have this conversation. Yeah, I wasn't expecting any vote or anything on this today. Obviously, this is a retreat, but I wanted us to have this back and forth conversation. And I feel like retreats or workshops are usually just better suited for that. The idea in the open for business when it comes to actual incentives for something big would be that it would be specific businesses that we want. We're not doing it for like a restaurant. We're not doing it for a Target. We're doing it for something like the large office space that we're getting off of Sigma, that are bringing in high paying jobs where people will move here that have, that are going to fill those, or where if there are some people who are eligible, they can have jobs closer to home and don't have to drive to North Charleston or Charleston to get that biotech job or that IT job or something like that. You're trying to bring in those higher end jobs. So it's not just for like every particular, business. It's just the ones that we know we want to recruit.
Yeah, I could see it like in Oak Brook where there's a new office building coming in on the corner there at Brandonville. And they bought the whole block, and we got 2 strip type shopping centers that they completely redone that look great to match their office building. Now that would be something that would be worth the town encouraging to happen, because they have made a tremendous difference in that. Right across from the Bow Tech, if anybody wants to drive down there and see it.
This is, we obviously need time to think about it, but this is, I agree with Walter and disagree, because I look at something like Page's Opal Grill as an example. Page's Opal Grill is there, and sure, I'd love to have them in town. But what I would really want to have in town is the hospital that's there. It happens to be contiguous through Page's Opal Grill, which I can't get to the hospital without Page's Local Grill, and Page's Local Grill has no need to be in the town of Somerville unless we want to provide them with an incentive. So there are all types of examples where this works in different ways, can work in different ways to our example, to our benefit. The other thing that is an oddity in it is what we really want is the hospitality. So I sit there and look at Nexton Square, okay? And as an example, we have Carolina Ale is in town Somerville. Every single one of those businesses and bars and restaurants and everything else that's in Nexton Square is in competition with Carolina Ale. And they're paying us nothing. Carolina Ale is paying us what they're paying us. So to provide incentive to, let's call it halls, if you could bring in a single piece for 3 years to bring them in that particular instance, in my mind, is not harming Carolina Ale in any way. Because they're not paying it now, and if they come into town, they're not paying it. They don't come into town, they're not paying it. We happen to be the beneficiary of hospitality funds. So we end up being a winner in my mind, and we haven't harmed anyone in the process. There are certain other instances where I believe it could be considered detrimental, whereas I've got if you were downtown Somerville and you were putting another business right next to one that was there, and you provided incentive to that one, then I would understand that that's there. So I think having the tool is a valuable tool. The fact that all subject to council approval caveats it, I hope makes it as safe as it can be, but allows us to use it where it is a benefit, and it keeps us from using it in a fashion that we say is unfair competition.
Yes.
I agree completely with you, Terry. It's almost like developments. Council gets to vote on whether it's worth it to us to use it or not. And we don't use it where it's detrimental. And you mentioned in the annexation, we have another situation on Dorchester Road where the county would like to bring some property in, and we're trying to get continuance to get to it. And we could offer that, even if it's just somebody coming into town so that we can move out and protect from somebody else annexing.
So I will, arguably, this is not something, Michael and I said this earlier, it's not something, when we meet with a new business, we're gonna, hand this out to someone. It's a tool that council has for industries that they want, for properties that they want, and properties that they want to help. It's not something that you have to. My argument would be that we currently have nothing in our ordinance that I have found that addresses this. Even when I was at the city of Manning, there was a paragraph that says, the city council for the city of Manning, because they were a city, or they thought they were, has the right to do X, Y, and Z, and blah, 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 blah. And we used that, and then we did an incentive ordinance to get Lowe's there. So the city of Casey knows that. They had that same kind of something in there that allowed them to do certain things. And we were able to do 2 different incentive ordinances there, one for Farm Bureau to keep their headquarters there, and one for a huge brewery that is a distribution center now and building its second distribution center. So it's one of those things that if you don't have it in your ordinance and then you pop up and do it whenever somebody comes in and wants it, it just makes it look just a little unfair, and then it's not giving council, then council doesn't have the tool already and know how to use it. The discussions are being driven by a developer or a property owner, not being driven by council, because it's something council wants. It's something brought to them and you're reacting to it. Whereas if you have it on the books, you say, this is what we can do, and that's it. And everybody has the same opportunity to ask council for it, and council has the same opportunity to say no every single time. It's existing in there.
we picking winners and losers every time somebody. So
If
I
it's
would,
just,
I would rather have what we have in Somerville now without that ordinance than to have Manning. With what they've got with the ordinance.
do you guys want some time, to look at it and us bring it back up at a council meeting or another workshop? We don't really have like an economic development committee unless we do it at planning and development committee or just however you want to keep talking about it. And if anybody wants to come and meet with Michael and myself, Michael more probably than me. And we can send you other ordinances if anybody else is interested in any other ones.
I think the only good plan and development, that's the closest we've got economic development.
I don't know, but I visited, like I said, Greenwood, Greer, Hendersonville, all these little towns out there are light years ahead of Somerville in redeveloping their downtown to look like it did when it was vibrant. And I mean, we are way behind. A lot of these little towns, they have civic centers, they have, I mean, if you do what you've done, you get what you got.
That's the end of our conversation. That's unless you guys have more questions about the budget. If lunch will be ready in a second, if we want to eat, and if you come up with anything else, you can ask while everybody's here or however you want to.
Bob, those towns you're talking about, they have incentive ordinances for annexation?
I know Greenwood does. They use that revolving money. I think they put 500,000 in businesses that wanted to redevelop that were there already or move in. They would give them X amount and then they pay it back. And as the fund replenishes itself, they just keep.
And the business license incentive ordinance is almost exactly what Greenville has, basically because Greenville has it that works and we're only allowed to do certain things in the state of South Carolina. So that one very much mimics that because you're only allowed to do certain things with business licenses. They're all the ordinances should probably be written just about the same and mimic state law because that's all you can do. So to keep yourself out of trouble.
Greenville's almost done too good for me.
Yeah, well, the mayor mentioned this morning, we were talking about it. Goose Creek has a incentive ordinance and actively recruits. North Charleston obviously does the same. City of Charleston does. I don't know if they have an actual incentive ordinance, but they have been very aggressive with annexation. So we could look in their ordinances and see what they have too. But the people who touch us have these exact same tools and have no problem using them.
I was telling Rebecca, while ago, that I had lunch with Keith Summit the other day with Nancy Bass, just all the mayors that were there, because there wasn't many of us, so I was sitting by Keith and after we were talking. And he asked me about our annexation, how our program was going, and I said, kind of slow. He said his was going fast. And he said, so I'll be up your way shortly. And he said, so if you're not coming my way, I'm coming your way. And he was laughing, and talking real friendly. But he dead serious.
He was in a chamber meeting.
Yeah,
He said, when I get there, I only have to change one letter to make it Summyville.
yeah, he's serious too, but he's got a crew. And but anyway, food for thought. I'm sure he's got some kind of ordinance, but I don't know what it is. I can ask him. You tell me. He doesn't mind letting me know what he's doing.
What he's doing to you. What he's doing to you.
Yeah, what he's doing to you. That's right.
I said that very nicely. The people that touch us have these same ordinances and do not mind using them. So that's kind of where we are. But Mayor, I don't have anything else unless anybody has any other questions. Lunch will be ready in a few.
So we're going to turn this ordinance over to the Planning and Development Committee.
I'm good with that.
Is that you too? Mr. McIntosh isn't here, so yeah. Okay. And if anybody, again, if you have any questions, let us know. We'll want to sit down and talk about it and we can show you others.
Okay, that's what we do, and they'll can bring us something back. Who's on that committee?
No, I know, but you know, I,
I have to look at the sheet, but I'm pretty sure it's back at me, Bob, and
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, Justin does, that's her, yeah.
All right, yes, okay. All right, y'all bring us something back at the council meeting next week. Don't meet that fast. Or whenever. I mean, it's not an emergency, but, you know, Michael needs something to work with. But seriously, I mean, I talked to Michael and, you know, the previous council before myself and Terry hired an economic development director. And he does need a few more tools to work with other than to go out here and beg people to come into town. He doesn't have a thing to offer, you know, other than higher taxes. And that's pretty tough to deal with, because Terry and I've been out there talking to people too. And, you know, it's kind of tough. And the next people we've been working with since we got in office here and 4 months ago, and since Rebecca came this month after we did almost, and she's worked with them tirelessly since she's been here, and they have made all kind of promises, and we still wait. But you know, the only thing we've been able to get done is the Hoya track, and that took a ton of work. And I don't think you're quite done with Pine Ridge yet, are you? Almost. The Pine Ridge Fire Department. But
Jesse, we have, next exam, next minute, is it on next month? Planning? Not yet? No. Awful. Right, report? No, the property where they put the townhouse is in the office and the department. And we want to take over and they want us to take over the road. Is it already? Yeah, the piece of it, but there's another piece that they want to annex that they've been working with you guys on.
Oh, yes,
That's on Brighton Park or Sydney?
that is, right,
Okay. With 48.
you know, it's a lot of talk been going on in a year and 4 months with Nexton. And when Terry and I met with them before Rebecca came, they blew smoke, buddy. I'm telling you, they were going to bring in that whole where Halls is, and they were going to do this, and they were going to do that, and they were going to do all these things if we hadn't, if we'd have washed our hands with Hoyer. At least they've made us think that, but I think if we'd have washed our hands with Hoyer, they wouldn't have done the thing more than what they've already done. But which was nothing.
prior to Pine Ridge,
Huh?
prior to Pine Ridge.
Yeah, right, Pine Ridge, yeah. But anyway, so we don't know where we're going with them, but for us to annex this, the state just made it almost impossible to do any annexation unless you got some kind of incentive. I'm with Walter. I don't want to give them the business license. We can't afford to give everybody the business license. You know, it's got to be something that like Terry's talking about, some kind of means that just similar to what's in this ordinance. But we just got to work it out. You know, the town needs to grow. And we met with oh shoot, I forgot the developer's name, Rebecca, that's out there on Dorchester Road. But real nice developer for the Shoemaker track, and which the Limehouse is on. And they really want to bring that property into town for some reason. I mean, they are hell bent determined to bring it into town. And it's a real nice development. I mean, they laid the thing out on my conference table. And we lack a little piece of land to be contiguous. And it's a mixed use development. Jesse, did you see it? Yeah. And did you like it?
they've actually,
Yeah, they submitted, but we got to get that other little piece contiguous, right?
Michael's worked with them.
Yeah, Mike is working with them. But you know, a subdivision like that will bring economic growth, I think. Inside down Dorchester Road, not too far down from Walmart. And,
Just
then
might
they'll-
be able to find a way to work with that little piece of land.
yeah. Which I think we can. Yeah, right.
I'm just saying that's the bigger part. It's not the mom and pop restaurant.
Yeah. That's right. That's where, and anyway,
You gotta play the long ball.
yeah,
Well, guns don't kill. You know, it's how you pull the trigger, and I think, you know, these things are potentially a weapon that you can use for success, but it's in the hands of the person who's holding the weapon.
It's nice to have you.
Which is counting, in this case, would be. Could be.
you know, we got, this is on this property is on this side, on the Dorchester Road side of, on the 61 side of, well, it's on this side of Orangeburg Road, but we've got that, Limehouse track down there that we brought into town back when I was on council in the early 2000s. And that, the people went broke on that twice. Mr. Terry annexed that into town. He went broke and then somebody else bought it and they went broke. And the same company that's doing this project that I'm talking about is developing the Limehouse track. And they told me they were going to town in there. I hadn't been out that way. But the same developer that's doing this project is doing the Limehouse track. So they're building nice houses in there for what they were telling me. So those would be money houses for us because it'll be expensive houses. So, you know,
It's definitely going well and
Yeah.
quickly, and it's good to note that they are building half as many houses with this development as the one we originally approved. 'Cause They changed that PUD and reduced what they were gonna do, so
I think
that's a
they
good thing too.
Jesse, aren't they putting townhouses in that project too?
There'll be some
Yeah, they
sort
are,
of-
Michael. Yeah. So that's gonna be nice, commercial and townhouses and single family. Doesn't go near the river, Bob. You like that? It's got wetlands.
The motion to adjourn.
Because it drops off. It drops off.
I don't know how much more public conversation we want to share.
I will mention to you guys, I got an email, and hopefully you got one too. The grand opening of the Trident Tech, the Oak Brook, in Oak Brook on Dorchester Road is March 18th at 10 o'clock. May 18th at 10 o'clock.
What's the one that says June?
Yeah, there was two.
There's two.
I think, well, so that's what, I think that she sent out. So
Mr. Bailey seconded.
Mayor's.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Meeting's adjourned.
Cut it, man.